on Your Side honors Black history with a special presentation of the East's hidden history.
Hello everyone and welcome to WNCT 9 on Your Side's Hidden History Special, where we celebrate Black history. I'm Ken Watling.
And I'm Shayla Reeves. We're here at the Oliver Nestis Freeman Roundhouse, an African-American museum in Wilson.
It's this museum that highlights the rich African-American history and culture in this community. Over the next half hour, we will explore what makes African-American history so special in the East.
We begin in Martin County. During the Civil Rights Movement, churches played a major role in helping African Americans stand up for their rights. One church in the East did just that in 1963.
The Williamston Freedom Rally started at the Green Memorial Church of Christ. WNCT's Amber Joseph shares its role in the fight.
In Williamston in 1963, it was a time of racial tension and segregation. Many of those marches and protests happening right here on these streets. I spoke with several people who tell me about that moment in time.
We couldn't go to the restaurants. When we went to the movie theater, we couldn't sit on the lower level because they had signs up there, whites only.
One of the best restaurants in town. They had a little hole about big as, not just big enough to get our sandwich, and we had to stand outside and order.
Decades of segregation, racial injustices, and brutal killings would reach a boiling point in the town of Williamston in 1963.
Williamston used to have a community swimming pool, and we would walk downtown and watch the kids throw colorful beach balls and just splash in water and just having all kinds of fun. But we were not allowed to go in.
Verona Smith-Stevens remembers it like it was yesterday.
And we would stand there with our little fingers clenched through the fence, just watching with envy at the other kids playing.
Those feelings building up over the years would soon spark a civil rights movement led by Edenton resident Golden Franks.
Mr. Finks came to Williamston and started the movement. That motivated me to want to participate.
Green Memorial Church was a key part in the 1963 Williamston Civil Rights Movement.
Because that was one of the only places that we could all gather and meet. A lot of adults were afraid to offer us meeting places, but the minister there opened his door and said, "Come in."
Packed with people getting ready to march and rally downtown.
We went every night and to church, and we would protest in front of the city hall, sing songs, and as we would march, they spat on us.
They're spitting on me around my neck and everybody else in that row. My collar was so wet, I could wring it out.
Bond and Smith say the movement, made up of mostly teens and young people, was nonviolent, but many times the sit-ins would take a turn for the worst.
We ran into John Howard and Styron Bonds, and the four of us decided that we would do something on our own.
So that night we went in Griffin's Quick Lunch in the White Sacks.
And when they saw us, the place became completely silent.
They picked up the chair from the back and held it over our heads.
No, don't bother them.
The owner said, "Don't hit them, that's what they want you to do."
And the police came and asked us to leave, and we said no.
Some would be arrested several times, then later released. The movement also boycotted downtown businesses in hopes of a change.
These leaflets were passed out for black people not to buy and encouraged us to go out of town.
Which Smith says made a statement.
When you start hurting people in their pockets, you really effect change.
Many of these memories, both Smith and Bond will carry with them forever. Comparing that day and age to now, they say all of the hardships, marching and arrest were worth it.
Yeah, I'm glad I did it.
They knew what they could lose from the protests, but also what they could gain.
I'm willing to die for the cause. If anything happens to me, it would have been worth it because I helped make things better.
For Hidden History, Amber Joseph, 9 on Your Side.
The The Williamston Freedom Rallies lasted for more than a month. Schools and facilities slowly integrated after the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Still ahead on Hidden History, we take you to Lenoir County to the first public black high school east of Raleigh.
Plus, we're highlighting some of the hidden treasures in the East. I'm Dominic Moody in Onslow County with a look at some of the historical markers and heroes.
In Onslow County, there are a number of historical markers highlighting African-American unsung heroes.
WNCT's Dominique Moody takes us to a few stops on the Jacksonville-Onslow African-American Heritage Trail.
Freedom, peace, and opportunity, the common themes associated with what African Americans face in order to lift their circumstances. There's more than a dozen stops along the Heritage Trail, and we're taking you to a few of them.
Edgar Yao, who had this vision of African Americans owning oceanfront property.
It began with a vision during an unparalleled time.
People having the audacity to build and develop oceanfront property and build homes on this island in this community in 1949.
Ocean City, North Carolina, 1949, where segregation is prevalent and opportunities for African Americans to own property are slim, making Ocean City a hard sell to blacks at the time.
They had difficulty selling lots. People just didn't have the vision or sometimes the money to invest in lots.
Kenneth Chestnut's father saw Edgar Yao's vision and took a vast approach to new beginnings.
My dad left the business that he and his brothers were in, automobile mechanics, and devoted the rest of his life to developing this community. We were bold and audacious to do that.
Word soon spread about what was happening, sparking a wave of black professionals to migrate to this part of Onslow County.
People from Wilmington, Fayetteville, Durham, Charlotte, Black Physicians Association, for example, or the Black Attorneys in North Carolina, invite them here, make them aware of this community.
By 1953, 3 families bought land and businesses started popping up. Game nights, outings, and exploration helped foster relationships in Ocean City.
The pier was built, a restaurant first, and then the pier, and then a motel. The men would go fishing or get together for social events every so often. The ladies in particular would go crabbing. They'd come back and share whatever meals they prepared or whatever they caught.
The manifestation of real estate turned dark after Hurricane Hazel. In 1954, the storm wiped out dozens of homes. But like many hardships the people faced, it served as a reminder to keep going.
They could have just said, well, we tried and then let it go. But they didn't do that. They came back and rebuilt.
Resiliency is why Chestnut continues educating visitors about the town's history.
I'm very proud of our ancestors and people who had the vision, the wherewithal to make this happen. A community doesn't exist for 70 years by accident.
Miles away in Jacksonville, a similar unbroken spirit arose at St. Julia AME Zion Church in 1949.
They would have service in that basement area. That basement area didn't even have a floor. It was sawdust.
Pastor Reverend Dr. Amy Ciceron says AME Zion offered an outlet for African Americans.
If you were black during that time, you knew of St. Julia. We got our information from the church, and we use that information to fight racism, to fight sexism, and all the isms that have sought to hold back the African American community or the systemic racism.
No matter what befalls us now.
Overcoming racism was widespread in Jacksonville, even at Georgetown High School, the only African-American high school in Onslow County in the early 1900s. Until its destruction in 1966 after the school was bombed and caught on fire.
Hand-me-down books. Some of us had to walk to school. Sometimes we didn't have proper clothing.
Willie Saunders and Rose Adams both graduated from Georgetown High. They say their teachers' lessons of overcoming adversity are unforgettable.
They kept us on the straight and narrow path. They didn't only educate you, but they was a part of the community.
While the high school is physically gone, the school pride lives on.
It was one of the best things that happened in Onslow County, as far as we're concerned.
History needs to be told as it happened.
The Jacksonville-Onslow African American Heritage Trail is open year-round and just recently added this memorial for the Voters' Rights Task Force, a group of African Americans who fought for representation within the city of Jacksonville. For 9 on Your Side Hidden History, I'm Dominique Moody.
There is hidden history in black communities all across eastern North Carolina, and that includes the city of Kinston.
Atkins Senior High School is a place with a story. It's the first black public high school east of Raleigh, opening in 1928. Unfair disadvantages, though, led to a walkout, prompting change back in 1951. WNCT's Courtney Allen explains.
Many times we go back in history and we talk about this was important, that was important, but we don't have anything to show for what's important, and we're just trying to keep it alive.
2 days before Thanksgiving in 1951, a senior at Atkins Senior High School in Kinston walked into the secretary's office with a message for the morning announcements.
When they said that the student had lost a red pocketbook, we were all asked to stand up and leave the classroom.
The message over the intercom about the little red pocketbook was the signal students had been waiting for. At that moment, classes at the all-black school emptied.
We had about 720 students in the class, and when it occurred, I heard all this rushing.
As students filled the streets of Kinston.
They had to walk a long way because they walked all the way from here all the way down to Queen Street and then down to the courthouse.
At the courthouse, students protested for equal rights. The school was in poor condition compared to the white school at the time, and many supplies were hand-me-downs from white students.
The prejudice that was associated with us not having things that we should have had, it opened my eyes to what the world is about.
Felix Coward was in 8th grade when the walkout happened and says things began to change quickly following the protest.
I was in my math class when I see trucks coming in and workers' work coming in to add this building to the campus.
During a time prior to the Civil Rights Act, protesting for equal treatment was a bold move, but it paid off for students. Within a few years, they received a brand new gymnasium, a space that alumni say laid the framework for their futures.
The best thing that ever happened to us. It gave us a building to hold the student body without us being, cramped. Made me realize that my future was a part of it, being an architectural engineer, being a college student.
The education that I received here prepared me to compete at the other levels. You look around the wall and see all these people. Most of these people lived in the black community, and they would not only talk about what we would call the essentials for learning, but also for living.
They now hope the legacy of Atkins Senior High will live on. The board of directors meets a few times a year back at their old gym. Their goal is to get grant money to restore the building and educate the younger generation.
I would hope that the younger generation would take away, you don't get anything in life without a struggle, and something worth fighting for is worth having.
Former students continue their fight to preserve this piece of Kinston's history. In Kinston, Courtney Allen, 9 on Your Side.
The story of Atkins Senior High's walkout is featured in the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C.
There's still more hidden history to come, including the story of the Negro Motorist Green Book. The book was an important tool for people of color traveling through the Jim Crow South, with dozens of locations listed in North Carolina, several here in the East. For 30 years, during the time of legal segregation, it was an important tool for people of color. It's the Negro Motorist Green Book. It was a guide of establishments that accepted African Americans. As Nicole Newman reports, it was pivotal in the days prior to the establishment of interstate highways.
Driving while black, dining while black, lodging while black. During the Jim Crow South, it was a matter of life and death for African Americans. It's what made this book, the Green Book, so critical during that time.
Is the Negro Traveler's Guide.
This guide served as a resource to help people of color safely plan their itineraries while navigating their travels during the 1930s to the 1960s.
It's critical because, of course, your very life and safety determined where you could go during the era of Jim Crow and legal segregation. Many times, African American travelers of color would pack lunches to avoid stopping, or pack their pocketbook, the Green Book, in their pocket, and literally map their destination points.
To better understand the importance of the Green Book, I met with Dr. Earl Imes, a curator at the North Carolina Museum of History in Raleigh. Imes explains how the Green Book came to be.
This was published between 1936 and 1966 by Victor Green, who was a postmaster in Harlem, New York.
With his networking as a postal worker, Imes says Green was able to create a product that was desperately needed during the mid and latter part of the 20th century.
America is enjoying its love affair with automobiles, and that also applies to the black community and communities of color, which are beginning to acquire automobiles, especially after World War II in the 1950s and 60s.
Currently, the museum has the 1959 edition of the Green Book on display. Listed in it are nearly a dozen locations in the East, including one which is still standing in Lenoir County today.
Mark's Tourist Home is listed, I believe, in the eastern part of Kinston, there in what used to be called the Black Business District part of that city.
Angela Thorpe is the acting director of the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission. Thorpe, through her work with the commission, helped bring the current Green Book display to the North Carolina Museum of History. It happened after a meeting with an attorney from Smithfield, North Carolina, named Craig James.
We mentioned that we were working a project related to the Green Book in North Carolina, and Mr. James just mentioned, hey, I have a Green Book, and he was so willing to donate it to the project. What better way to connect people to the Green Book in North Carolina than to put our Green Book that we have on loan on display?
That connection to the story is in part due to the 2018 award-winning and controversial movie, The Green Book.
It really juxtaposed the genius of Don Shirley, who had a white trio who could stay at the five-star hotels, but he was not allowed to. And so he had to seek a place that was listed in the Green Book.
Despite the sudden increased interest in the Green Book, Thorpe says the museum's current display and the commission's project have been years in the making. In the future, Thorpe and her team are working towards developing programs that will connect the Green Book to the legacy of African American travel. That includes 2 traveling exhibits that will begin touring the state in March 2020. For Hidden History, Nicole Newman, 9 on Your Side.
As the commission moves forward, it's currently searching for more editions of the Green Book.
Organizers are asking that you search your attic and storage facilities to see if you have one. We'll be right back. We hope you've been informed and inspired by the stories we brought you about the impact of African Americans here in the East.
For Hidden History, I'm Ken Watley.
And I'm Shayla Reeves. Thank you for watching.